Some of you may know that I always take into consideration the early game more so than the late game when I evaluate ships. And this is because the early game is the stage when you are the most vulnerable compared to the late game. And on paper, this may not make sense because the harder bosses, the flagships, the ship unlock bosses, they're all located in the later half of the game. But in actuality, the most vulnerable stage of the game when we're talking about consistent wins is going to be the early game. And I'm going to explore why in today's video. One of the main reasons why early fights are so much harder than later fights is because you don't have a lot of time to prepare for them. Some of the most dangerous fights, such as the Sector 2 and Sector 3 Renegades, means that you only really have Sectors 1 and maybe Sector 2 stores to prepare for them. And on a stock gunship like MV Castro, for example, you don't have any defensive systems, so you're really going to want to visit stores to find systems. However, the sector map can be bad. In this case, I've gotten a really bad one. Like, I can't go to this NG store because not only will it force me to make a dive, but it will also mean that, well, it's on the left side of the map. I only have 2 jumps before I reach it, so I'm probably not going to be able to afford hacking or cloaking. So if we look at this store, there is one civilian store event that has a chance to just not sell any systems, and then the rest of them also just have about 65% chance to sell systems, so it's okay. And this one right here, I probably will not be seeing this at all because right now I can see the whole map because I've used the console command, but if I don't know the map, I would probably go somewhere along this path where I would see most of the map, but then I would miss out on this one because it doesn't make sense for me to go through this path and to the exit when there's a higher chance that the store spawns up here due to there being more beacons around here. So all in all, this map would set me up pretty badly for Sector 2 because I need to be at this store in 7 jumps. So if I made 7 jumps, I may or may not be able to afford hacking or cloaking, and that's if the store sells those systems at all. After that, I'll be thrust into Sector 2 where there may be a renegade just waiting for me on jump 1. And if your Sector 1 was bad in terms of stores, that's it. There's not much counterplay you have to that. Whereas if you think about the long run, when you go through 7 sectors before you reach the flagship, you'll likely find at least 10 stores, hopefully even more, especially if you find something like a sale sector or the black market. And friendly sectors, they also have more stores than hostile sectors. But just by going through so many stores, you're almost guaranteed to get the systems that you need. Not guaranteed, nothing is really ever guaranteed in FTL, but there's a much higher chance of you being able to find those systems for the flagship fight than you being able to find and afford those systems in Sector 1. Even in Sector 1, there are certain enemy ships that may pose a threat to player ships. The most common example is going to be an enemy ship with a combat drone and a 1 power weapon. In the worst case scenario, this will be a heavy laser 1 because the only other 1 power weapons are defense lasers, mini beams, and heavy laser putting 2 damage into any system is gonna be the most threatening. So as we can see here, the heavy laser gets a chance to fire before we can ever fire back. And that's bad because if these two sync up, that there's a possibility that our shields or weapons could be hit. And there is some stuff you can do to bypass this, like doing the depowering trick and all that from vanilla, but there is still the possibility. It does not remove that possibility, it just reduces the chance. So there is a chance that our shields or weapons get hit, and after that things are going to go haywire. If our shields get hit, our weapons could get hit, and then we have no chance of fighting back. We'll just get whacked around until we fix our systems or we get beaten from 30 hull to 0 hull. And that's the thing with ships like Federation A, because they are vulnerable to situations like these with no counterplay. Whereas something like Technician B, for example, has hacking, so it could hack the enemy drone system, and when the heavy laser is about to fire, You can hack the system and the drone will not be able to sync up. And that allows you to always get the first strike on them. And that's important because if you can disable their offense at the same time, or even better, before they get to shoot at you, then you're in a much better position safety-wise compared to something like Federation A or Castrol A, for example. Now we're going to have a look at some of the most dangerous Sector 2 encounters you can face, starting off with some sector-specific encounters. This one you can find in outcast sectors where you fight a random slaver ship inside an asteroid field. And it's a forced fight, and some of the slaver ships are weirdly trapped for some reason. Like, this guy has 2 power weapons and 4 auxiliary systems. So they even have a boarding crew, like, so they can board you, mind control you, hack your weapons, and cloak the damage that's coming towards them, while both of you are being pelted by asteroids. So this could be really bad for certain ships that may not be able to afford level 2 shields for whatever reason. And I could generate some more. There we go. Zoltan shields are also possible. I don't have it up right now, but I did generate a Dustbringer Slaver that had Teleporter, Mind Control, and a Zoltan shield, so that could also be dangerous as well. Another sector-specific fight is going to be the Rebel fight at a Pulsar. It's also a forced fight that can appear in sectors like Union, Federation, and maybe Harmony. I'll have to check back on that. But there's an enemy type called the Rebel Marauder, and this could be pretty dangerous because it can appear at this pulsar, and I'll just show you some of the loadout it can generate. So right now it doesn't have the most threatening loadout. Let me see if I can find a dangerous one. So okay, something like that, where imagine this was at a pulsar and there's a combat drone and a chain heavy and a missile shooting at you. If the pulsar hits you in a bad spot and it doesn't hit that badly at all, it could go bad really quickly. Even at a normal ship fight, at a normal beacon, this fight is already somewhat threatening in Sector 2, but if you put this at a pulsar, that's when things get really bad. Now let's take a look at some Sector 2 and Sector 3 renegades. I've made some tables to demonstrate the power of these renegades, whereby the numbers indicate the maximum power level that their systems can operate at. This is a possible loadout for the Slug Renegade in Sector 2. It can have up to level 3 hacking, 4 power in crew drones, that is boarding or their own onboard ship drones, as well as level 4 weapons. And this is a possible loadout for the Slug Renegade in Sector 3. It can have up to level 3 hacking, 6 power in crew drones, and 6 power in weapons. This is a possible loadout for the Leech Renegade in Sector 2. It can have up to 4 drone power, 4 weapon power, and it always has a reloader and a shield charge booster. And this is a possible loadout for the Leech Renegade in Sector 3. It can have up to 6 power worth of combat drones and 6 power worth of energies and ion weapons. This is a possible loadout for the Rock Renegade in Sector 2. It always spawns with combat drones up to 3 power, and it can have up to 5 power worth of weapons. And this is a possible loadout for the Rock Renegade in Sector 3. It can have up to 5 power worth of combat drones and 7 power worth of weapons. This is a possible loadout for the Rebel Renegade in Sector 2. It can have up to level 2 Cloak, a level 3 combat or defense drone, and level 4 weapons. And this is a possible loadout for the Rebel Renegade in Sector 3. It can have up to level 3 Cloak, 5 power in combat or defense drones, as well as level 6 weapons. This is a possible loadout for the Shell Renegade in Sector 2. It can have drones that total up to 4 power, as well as hacking level 2 and weapons level 4. And this is a possible loadout for the Shell Renegade in Sector 3. It has 3 combat drones totaling up to 6 drone power and 3 weapons that total up to 6 weapon power. It also has level 2 hacking. These are just some examples of the dangerous fights that you can encounter in Sectors 2 and 3. Now, I'm not saying that you're gonna run into these every single run. And just like the drone ships that I was showing you in Sector 1, it does take quite a bunch of RNG for them to actually destroy you completely, but the existence of these fights is what makes me value ships that are able to ward off such fights. I've been mostly talking about sectors 1 to 3 because your performance in sector 4 and onwards is usually dictated by how well you've performed in sectors 1 to 3 in terms of acquiring scrap, upgrading your offense, and getting your systems. So if we take a look at sectors 4, we can see that renegade cruisers will start to spawn. However, you can pay off any of them with just 45 scrap. So if I see something like Mog B and I don't like that fight, I'm just going to pay 45 scrap and my run is going to be saved. Now, the jump between Sector 3 to Sector 4 is actually a lot less steep than the jump between Sector 2 to Sector 3 in terms of like enemy generation and what items they can use. I won't go into too much detail on that in this video, but the sum of it is that enemies get a lot stronger relative to how much you can scale yourself up when you go from Sector 2 to Sector 3, as opposed to Sector 3 to Sector 4, where not only do the enemies not get that much stronger, but you also get even more store opportunities. And that's mostly why I say Sectors 1 to 3 is the most important, but I'm not going to say Sector 4 is not important. It still is, like Sector 4 and 5 are still kind of important, but usually if you had a successful Sectors 1 to 3, your Sectors 4 and 5 should also be a breeze. When we're talking about winning a regular flagship run, there aren't a lot of fights that are compulsory for you to beat in order to win the game. The most obvious one is going to be the flagship, since you do need to beat the flagship to beat the game, but aside from that, theoretically, if you had a flagship ready loadout, you could just run from every other enemy, beeline to the flagship, and win the game. Well, if you're playing on Extreme, you also do have to take into consideration the MFK Picket Ace at the start of Sector 8, but beyond that, there's really no other compulsory enemy. So right now, you're seeing a clip of me fighting the MFK Picket Ace hypothetically in Sector 8, and you can see throughout this fight that I don't even bother attacking their weapons. Like, in reality, you should always shoot down weapons first, but right now I'm just shooting other systems just to prove a point that with Cloak hack, you're basically invincible. So imagine if you also shoot down enemy weapons, then you'll be even safer in the long run. And this is basically the formula for every single enemy that you come across, aside from the flagship, is that once you get hacking and cloaking, you can basically lock most of them out from dealing damage to you. Yes, there'll be some exceptions, like if they have charged missiles like Hydra and Pegasus, then yeah, maybe they'll do chip damage to you. But we come back to the main talking point again, whereby if you can beat the flagship, you don't really have to kill these guys. You can take 1, 2 hull damage, chip damage, it's fine, you can shrug it off, repair, get to the flagship, and then beat it anyways. One more thing I'd like to point out with regards to later fights is that the important ones are all predetermined. Like this flagship loadout right here, they will always have this loadout if I play on the same difficulty. Level 4 artillery, level 3 mind control, level 2 teleporter, this same crew setup, and in fact, the crew all stay at the exact same spot, as in they spawn exactly where they are right now, so you will always be boarded by 2 soldiers and a medic first. It is that predetermined. The same goes for phases 2 and 3. It always has hacking, always has drone surge, the same drones. Phase 3 always has the same power surge, cloak, weapons, energy shield, you name it. So these are all things that you know what to expect, so you can prepare accordingly for them. So once you find a strategy that works for all phases of the flagship, then you'll be able to consistently replicate that strategy. And like I said, once you do have the required pieces, you can just run from every other fight and beat the flagship and claim your victory. Now, this does not, however, apply to early game fights, because the generic dangerous enemies you see at pulsars, asteroids, and those renegade beacons, those are not fixed. So yes, there is a chance that they may not be as dangerous as the examples I've shown earlier. That is entirely possible, yes. But there is also the chance that they are actually very, very dangerous. And the problem is that when we say that they are very dangerous, there are multiple ways they can be dangerous. Like maybe the renegade on one hand could have two extremely fast combat drones, in which case you'd say, okay, maybe if I have a guardian drone, then it will help. Or maybe in another case, then it may just have a whole bunch of lasers and flags, and it might possibly hack your weapons, so it doesn't allow you to shoot before they fire. And then in that case, the guardian drone's not actually that useful, right? Because it does counter the combat drones, and it's still pretty useful because a lot of the images I've shown feature combat drones. However, in the case that it doesn't go combat drones, or in the case its weapons are more dangerous than the drones itself, then your investment in drone control is not that lucrative. But on the other hand, the flagship always has a set loadout, so you know you can always bring a Guardian Drone Mark II and you'll always be able to counter phase 2. To sum this video off, let me just clarify a couple of things. Just because I've used Federation A as a punching bag in this video does not mean I think it is unplayable. Far from it, in fact. I've won with it, and I'm sure like most of you guys have won with it as well. However, when I talk about my tier list, I'm mostly talking about consistency, and that goes for any ship that I evaluate. How consistently can it win runs? And the fact of the matter is that if there are such fights that exist such that the Federation A can struggle against those fights, then there is no reason for me to rank Federation A over something far more stable like Stealth A that does not struggle against those same fights. And those fights themselves, they're not actually common. In fact, in the Renegade section of this video, I spent around 5 to 10 minutes rolling for each of those Renegades, and that just means that those loadouts are not actually that common. You'll probably face those run threatening loadouts like once every 20 runs, once every 50 runs. It's rare. You not only have to land on the dangerous beacon, you also have to roll that particular renegade and have no way to pay them off. So it's not common at all. That's why I think Federation A probably still has a like 80% win rate at worst. In fact, if we talk about potential optimizations, it probably is closer to 90%. There's only a couple of ships in the game that are truly horrendous, like these. But aside from that, it's just a matter of relativity at the end of the day. When I'm talking about Federation A, I don't see any reason to rank it above Stealth A because Stealth A has far fewer bad matchups than Federation A has. And once all of these ships survive sectors 1 to 3, there's a 99% chance they'll all go on to win the game. So that's the sum of this video. It's like there are fights that exist that pose a danger to certain ships, and that's the reason why I'm ranking them low. Because if there aren't those ships that pose a danger, then what else is there? Anyways, I hope you guys found this informative, and if you have any questions, just let me know in the comments. I understand this was a bit of an unstructured video, but I think it was one that was important to get out because I'll be referencing this quite a lot in future videos when I talk about why I'm prioritizing early fights so much more often, as you'll see in my upcoming Kura video. But again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.